All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're looking at a pretty radical new way to see our economy. The idea? To completely toss out our old metaphors. So, forget the idea of the economy as some kind of cold, predictable machine. Instead, what if we imagined it as a living, breathing system?
And that really is the question at the heart of all this. For so long, we've approached finance like it's a machine, something you can engineer, something with levers and dials you can pull and twist. But what if that whole metaphor is just wrong? What if the economy is much more like a living thing with its own pulse, its own breath, its own natural cycles? So, here's where the perspective really shifts. The old mechanical view, it's all about static things you can count, the numbers on a balance sheet, stocks, assets. But this new, living view, it's focused on something else entirely, dynamic flows. It's about the vital rhythms of trust and capital, the breathing cycles of expansion and renewal. It's really a jump from simple accounting to something more like alchemy.
Okay, so let's really dig into this new perspective. The idea is to reframe finance as the stewardship of living fields of capital. So every investment isn't just a simple transaction. It's part of a much larger, systemic breath. And this, right here, is the core thesis. It's a huge idea. It suggests that future success won't be about who can pile up the most assets. No, it'll belong to those who can understand and nurture the vitality, the actual rhythmic health of the entire system. That's a profound change in how we think about what value even is. So if we're saying the economy is alive, then it's gotta have a heartbeat, right? So what does that pulse actually sound like? Well, it all comes down to a really fundamental rhythm, an inhale and an exhale of capital. To explain this, the source borrows a concept you might know, chi. Now let's be super clear. In this model, chi isn't some mystical, airy-fairy energy. It's the measurable vitality in the system. Think about the buzz, the energy you feel in a thriving marketplace versus the dead silence of a closed-down shop. That's chi. It's the pulse of trust and flow that makes an economy feel coherent and, well, alive. And this breathing pulse, it has two distinct phases. There's the yang phase, that's the exhale. It's an expansion where capital flows outward, funding new ideas, taking risks, pushing innovation. Then you have the yin phase, that's the inhale. It's a contraction where capital flows inward, consolidating gains and managing risk. And one isn't better than the other. They're just two sides of a single healthy breath. And this is so important to get. Our news cycle usually treats any kind of contraction like a total failure. But think about it. What happens to a system that only exhales? It's like the dot-com bubble, right? Just constant expansion until it pops from exhaustion. And what about a system that only inhales? Well, it's a deep recession where everyone's hoarding cash and nobody invests. Both are sick. True vitality, true health is in the rhythm between the two. Okay, so we've got the inhale and exhale down, but it gets even deeper. Turns out, a healthy system doesn't just breathe in and out, it actually moves through 5 distinct seasons, and each one has its own unique character, its own purpose. Think about it like you're tending a garden, First, you have growth, where you're planting new seeds of innovation. Then comes ignition. That's when a few of those seeds just catch fire and sprout like crazy. Next to stabilization, where you've got to build trellises and supports for that new growth. Then comes pruning, where you strategically cut back the branches that aren't bearing any fruit. And finally, you have nourishment, just letting the soil rest, letting it recover, preparing for the next season of planting. So let's translate that into the world of finance. Growth? That's your R&D phase, just exploring a ton of new ideas. Ignition is when one of those ideas becomes a massive hit product, and suddenly it gets a huge round of funding. Stabilization is the really hard work of turning that hot product into a sustainable business with solid infrastructure. Pruning is when that same company starts selling off its divisions that aren't performing well. And nourishment? That's building up cash reserves during a stable period, getting ready for the next big push. But here's the really powerful part. This framework isn't just a neat way to describe things. It's a diagnostic tool. It gives us a whole new language for figuring out what's wrong when a system's health starts to fail. It lets us identify specific breathing disorders that happen when these healthy rhythms just completely break down. First up, you've got what's called drift disorder. This is what happens when a system just keeps exhaling and exhaling with no real purpose. The expansion starts to outrun any kind of coherence.
I mean, think about the crypto boom at its absolute peak. Money was just pouring into thousands of different coins and projects, so many of them with no clear purpose, all just chasing this narrative of endless growth with nothing solid to anchor it. And this just captures the problem perfectly, doesn't it? The system is expanding, so on the surface, it looks like success. But it can't ground itself, it can't inhale. It's like a wildfire spreading uncontrollably. Yeah, it's growing, but it's really just turning its own foundation to ash as it expands into total chaos. And then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have freeze disorder. Now, this isn't overexpansion. This is systemic suffocation. This is when the system literally can't breathe at all. Trust collapses, liquidity evaporates, and the entire circulation of capital just seizes up. It's the financial equivalent of a massive heart attack. This is such a powerful insight. We tend to think that financial crises are about a lack of money, but a system can be flooded with capital and still freeze. The real collapse, the catastrophic failure, happens when the trust that's required for circulation just vanishes. It's like having a full tank of gas, but a broken fuel line. The resource is there, but it can't get to where it needs to go. So, with this new lens, we can look back at history and see it in a whole new light. The 2008 crisis, for example, wasn't just about a bunch of bad loans. From this perspective, it was a classic freeze disorder, a catastrophic failure of the entire system's breathing rhythm, as trust just evaporated and the flow of liquidity seized up completely. So what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for us? Well, this living systems view demands a totally new role for anyone involved in finance. We have to shift from being mechanics trying to fix a broken machine to becoming more like stewards, or maybe even gardeners, of a living ecosystem. And here is the fundamental shift in our objective. Instead of just focusing on maximizing growth and accumulating more stuff, the steward's primary goal is completely different. It's to preserve the system's vitality, its ability to breathe, to adapt, and to renew itself over the long haul. This means we have to develop a whole new set of skills. Instead of just measuring things that have already happened, a steward learns to sense the living rhythm of the market. They don't just slam on the brakes or hit the gas. They learn to gently modulate the system's breathing, slowing it down when it overheats, stimulating it when it starts to stall. And maybe most importantly, they work to cut through all the noise and confusing stories that can choke the flow of good information.
And that's what it all comes down to, isn't it? This framework gives us an entirely new way to see and to interact with our financial world. It asks us to stop staring at spreadsheets for a minute and start listening for the living pulse of the system. If our economy really is alive, then the most important question we can ask is, are we even trying to hear its heartbeat?